Hello and welcome to the oddschecker betting show sponsored by 888 Sport. I'm your host George Elek and this is a preview of Saturday's racing at Cheltenham. It's Cheltenham Festival Trials Day. On today's show, find out which horse Andy Holding thinks running on Saturday is value for the Triumph.
He's a pretty good horse, and the time figure very much points in his direction. So I'm all over him as well, particularly at the prices with the dead 8 runner race. Let's just hope all 8 runners go to post.
Here, which Ben Pauling horse Ed Quigley is keen on with a seal of approval from Andy Holding.
There is a chance you could probably get double figures about him here, and if you do, I'm definitely getting involved.
Which double-figure price horse Andy thinks should be near enough favourite.
We just don't really know how good he can be.
And we hear from 888 Sport ambassador Barry Geraghty as he looks back on last weekend's incredible Clarence House.
And it's rare that these matchups, work out to the billing.
Before we dive into the action, I want to let you know of a brand new podcast and YouTube show from oddschecker called Racing Weekly. Racing Weekly is hosted by Rishi Prasad and 5-time tipster of the year Sam Turner as they take a 360-degree view of the sport we all love. Each week, the guys will be reviewing the weekend's racing just gone, looking forward to the week ahead and tackling the biggest stories in the sport in the build-up to Cheltenham Festival.
From the start of Tommy's life, it's never been straightforward. I think he's always been a rascal.
How are the owners? How are everyone associated with dear old master Tommy Tucker?
Scott is absolutely gutted. Tony and Louise are too, obviously.
Episode 1 of Racing Weekly is out now, and episode 2 will be out on Monday on YouTube or wherever you download your podcasts. Delighted as ever to be joined by oddschecker's very own Andy Holding and Ed Quigley as well. Before we look ahead to Saturday's racing at Cheltenham, Andy, got to look back at last weekend's racing as well. I spoke in depth yesterday with Barry Geraghty, 888 Sport ambassador Barry Geraghty, about both the run of John Bon and what that means for the Supreme, and also what the Champion Chase picture looks like after that incredible Clarence House last weekend as well. So we won't go into too much detail because that's coming up shortly. But I think the eye test probably told us everything we needed to know about John Bon's performance in beating Mai Tai. Drifted to third favourite now in the Supreme market. Anything to worry about for Dysart Dynamo and Constitution Hill backers?
Well, put it this way. I actually thought his victory there, albeit in workmanlike fashion, was a good deal better than his previous other 2 runs, because the other 2 runs didn't really tell us anything other than he could sprint at the end of a race. Because there wasn't any gallop involved. But on Saturday at Haydock, they went a good gallop. We thought there'd be a lot of pace on, and it really did play into his hands. I think the problem was with where he was in the market. I think he was always the wrong price based on what he'd done compared to the others. The reaction of them pushing him out in price, was probably only really to fall in line with what he should have been in the first place. I actually think he conversely, enhanced his actual reputation by winning the way he did at Haydock on a track that was a bit too tight for him, ground that was probably a little bit more testing. He would have been desired as well. So I think he comes out of that race with a glowing reference, really, rather than any negativity from my point of view. That said, I don't think he's quite as good as the other 2. I still maintain that Constitution Hill and Dysart Diamond are the 2 to concentrate on with regard to the Supreme. But from being a horse I didn't really regard as being in the same ballpark as the other 2 up till now, he certainly closed the gap off the back of that run at Haydock.
Interesting. Ed, the Clarence House was some spectacle, really lived up to its billing, with Shishkin just about chasing down Energumene as the 2 pulled clear. What did you make of that? And is there anything in that performance that suggests to you that the form could be overturned in 6 or 7 weeks?
Yeah, it was an absolute thriller, wasn't it, George? Everyone's got their own views on it, but I had no financial interest in it. It'd probably be the most exciting races I've ever seen. Just purely 2 top-class 2-milers going hammer and tongs. I thought it was absolutely thrilling. Loved it to bits. As for the future, yeah, interesting one. The general consensus is Shishkin will probably do it by further. Back left-handed at Cheltenham. The kind of the spanner in the works, or to play devil's advocate, would be that that it's been well documented that the Champion Chase is a furlong short or thereabouts. Game that puts a bit more of an emphasis on speed into the contest, whereas Shishkin, to me, on soft ground 2 miles wide, it's just like his stamina got him home. In an ideal world, I actually think like the Ryanair Chase is the race for Shishkin. I think he would give Allaho something to really think about over that trip, but he's unfashionable. He's going to stick to 2. I think going further forward, Shishkin will get 3 miles on his head next season, no doubt about it. But as for now, I think, yeah, it's more likely that Shishkin wins and wins again by further. My only proviso I've got here is, which goes against logic, but it's something I think it's logic. But I've touched about this on previous shows. Shishkin now has a Clarence House win on soft. He won his Supreme on soft to heavy. He pulverised the Tingle Creek winner at Kempton by 8 lengths on soft. And yet all you keep hearing from Seven Barrows is all on better ground, a good ground. He's a lovely mover. I think it's a massive red herring. I do repeat it. And I do just wonder if we, at the moment here, it's not rained for a fortnight in Cheltenham. If this kind of Gloucestershire Riviera continues for a bit longer, and we got a proper spring-like ground. I mean, ground where they've had to throw some water on it to take the sting out of it, as opposed to it raining for a week beforehand. I just wonder if Energumene went a stride faster and he just got Shishkin on the back foot, and he suddenly had 7 or 8 lengths to make up. Would that just put a bit too much emphasis on the speed side of things rather than stamina? So almost again, going against the grain, I actually think a kind of good to soft ground champion Chase might actually play against Shishkin. It's just a personal conjecture, and but there we go. Look, on balance, Shishkin is the most likely winner in the champion Chase, and I think Cheltenham will play to his strengths. I'd just be worried if they did go, he was on the back foot of a few of those fences, and you listen to Nico de Boinville saying they were really trapping and turning into the home straight. He thought he was cooked, and it was only the horse's stamina which kind of pulled it out the fire, and that would just be on the old course at Cheltenham, 2 miles. Could he come slightly unstuck? But yeah, just hopefully they both make it to the rematch, because I just cannot wait.
Yeah, nor can I. And as I say, I spoke to Barry in depth about this, and you can hear his thoughts in 5 or 10 minutes. That's 888 Sport Ambassador Barry Geraghty sharing his thoughts on last weekend's racing and the weekend ahead of us. Saturday's racing at Cheltenham, the Cheltenham Trials Day, is what we're going to be covering here. We have 8 races on the card, and we're going to start with the first and go through the whole day. The 12:15, the first race of the day, through to the 4:15, the last. Before we do so, just gonna, as ever, point the listener and viewer in the direction of the oddschecker app. Do download it now. We'll be talking in terms of the best prices on the app today, and also the best bookie offers, free bets, place terms, and everything else, including Andy's tips, straight to the app every morning of racing. So do download the app now if you haven't already. I've only been telling you to do so for the last 3 years, so get on it. The 12:15, the first race we're going to cover, the Handicap Hurdle over just over 2 miles. Ed, no prices here at the moment because we're recording this just before 1 o'clock on Thursday. I don't think there'll be prices here until Friday evening, but we normally would skim past these because, of course, with oddschecker, we're all about the value, hard to get value at SP, but you've got a horse that you want to flag up at this stage.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just one for the notebook. No, it was kind of I'd circled it at the entry stage, and now he's declared, shall we say? So yeah, as you say, no prices at the time of recording. But my friend from last week's show, Ben Pooling, I spoke in depth about how a lot of his horses are kind of gone off the boil in the kind of depth of the winter, but now we're just starting to come back to hand, and he looks to have quite a few handicap sorts on the up his sleeve. And Severance, horse number 9 on your card here. Keelan Woods will take the ride. This is a horse they've just clearly been running over the wrong trip. He ran at Weatherby last time out, absolutely pulled the jockey's arms out over 2 miles 5 on soft on that occasion. If you go back to the November meeting at Cheltenham, was over 2 miles 5. Luca Morgan could not keep a lid on him, going to post in the early stages. He's just clearly not getting home over stiff tracks, tests of stamina. He comes back in distance here today, just as the Ben Pooling team are starting to hit form. I mentioned a few of their horses ran well into places at big prices last week. He's fired in 3 winners in the last week as well. They're just starting to click, I think it's fair to say. And Severance down in trip, I think that's the key here. They'll go a lot quicker over this distance, this extended 2 miles compared to what he's been traipsing around in these soft ground kind of malarkeys last time out, etc. And he's been eased down to a mark of 1.22 as well. So yard in form. Down in the weights, down to 2 miles. Ground should be fine. Again, I think he could be a bit of a sneaky one in here because, yeah, his overall profile, what he's done the last couple of runs, doesn't jump off the page. But if you look back to some of his form over 2 miles last year, it was pretty good. And, he wasn't beaten all that far when third time lucky as well. We obviously know that form's gone on to be pretty good. So off 1.22, he's definitely one. I mean, I've tried to price this race up. There is a chance you could probably get double figures about him here, and if you do, I'm definitely getting involved.
I took the mickey a bit last week, Ed, when you were just tipping up Ben Pauling horses at big prices, and then they both ran absolute crackers. So I've learnt my lesson, and I'm not going to say anything.
Well, yeah, this week's a new week, isn't it? Yeah, but I know what you mean.
Exactly. No, I've got a feeling they should go well. Andy, anything for you in that race, or should we move on to the second where we've got some prices to go off?
I'll just put a little bit of flesh on the bones of Severance for Ed's benefit, really, and for the viewers. Wanted to know about his time figures and what Ed was saying, and that is very much backed up with his profile that we've got. His 2 fastest ever time figures were over 2 miles. Funny enough, his victory at Carlisle last year was better than his run at Kempton, albeit they were both very good. If he runs to the level he did first time at Carlisle, he can nearly win this. He's got similar time figures to the likes of Lively Citizen and Masters Legacy. His last 2 runs, he dropped. There's been a massive drop up in form, courtesy of him running over the wrong trip and pulling too hard. So, yeah, I think Ed's onto something there with that one.
The seal of approval from Andy, worth its weight in gold there. Severance, the one in the first at Cheltenham to hopefully get us off to a flyer. Right, on to the 12:45 now, the JCB Triumph Trial Juvenile Hurdle, the Grade 2. And Pied Piper is the 13-8 favourite ahead of ICO at 2-1. In turn to Civilla, 9-2 for Ever William, 8-1, 11-1 bar. Dead 8 runners here, Andy. I'll come to you first. Pied Piper, bit of a spoiler for what's coming next. A horse that Barry is excited to see on Saturday and heads up the market.
I think this is genuinely the first time that we've got a proper trial. We've had a few sparring matches, a few half decent performances here, there, and everywhere in the juvenile category. But I think we've now got some real genuine interest with regard to the Triumph Hurdle in another couple of months' time. We've also got the Spring Juvenile Hurdle as well at the Dublin Racing Festival. I think that's going to tell us even more about the likes of Vauban, Phil Dorr, Ben Segal, Icar Prince. And we've got ICO against Pied Piper here. I'd bill this as the big matchup between the two, the Anglo-English-Irish clash. ICO represents a really good form line at Kempton. The day when he won at Boxing Day, we got this horse clocking the fastest juvenile time either side of the Irish Sea up to now. And I was very impressed with the way he did it. He chased a very hot pace. One of Tom Simmons's went off like the taxman was chasing it. And Bryony Frost decided to chase him for the first half mile, but then she took a pull. She sat him behind. But even so, that they were still going a fair lick down the back, and there was a point on the home turn you're thinking, can this horse possibly keep up the gallop? Well, he answered it in the affirmative, because not only did he keep it up, he actually pulled even further clear of the horses that were closing in behind him, having had an easier run through. So he's obviously got a really good combination of speed and stamina. He was eased down at the finish. He could have run even faster. We just don't really know how good he can be. I mean, I've had a few quid on him for the Triumph just because he's done the good number already, the best time so far. I think he's overpriced currently in that market. But he does face Pied Piper, who was a good horse on the flat for John Gosden. I think the Queen actually owned him. Rather surprisingly let him go. First time out, he was good at punches down. I don't think he would have beaten Vauban. His main market rival had that horse jump the last a little bit cleaner. But either way, the pair of them pull well clear. They're both highly regarded. And, Gordon Elliott, I think he's using this not necessarily as a foot soldier for Field Door to get a feel of how the English are in comparison to his star horse. I genuinely think he's bringing him over thinking he can win this race. I think the market will probably react accordingly. But of what they've done up to now, ICO is definitely the quicker of the two. If he gets a good pace to shoot at, and I presume he will, because in turn to Civil, I was in there and made all the running at Cheltenham last time. And, of course, Moulin Climart is in there. He made all at Sandown. So it'll give Harry Cobden the opportunity to sit him behind the pace and get a good toe down to the second last and then see what he can do from there. And I think it's also interesting as well, one final point, they could have taken the easy option and gone back to the Adonis track, obviously, that he won over first time out. That would have been easy meat for him, easy pickings. But they obviously want to come and find out straight away whether he's a Triumph Hurdle horse and run him over the same course and distance as the big one itself in March. So, yeah, I'm a big ICO fan. So soon find out whether I'm right or wrong on Saturday.
You mentioned ICO there for the Triumph, 14-1 best price, as short as 15-2 elsewhere. So that 14-1 may be worth snaffling before Saturday second if Andy's thoughts are to come to fruition. Ed?
Yeah, interesting video, isn't it? Really made you sit up and take note of that performance. Interesting listening to Paul Nicholls' comments. So probably echo what Andy was saying. He said, look, we could go back to Kempton, but Kempton's not Cheltenham. What he was saying, right-handed speed test, totally chalk and cheese to what he's going to get here over this trip and track. So testing the water. Pied Piper is interesting. The one thing I would say is, you could kind of see out my window here. It's 12, 13 degrees. There's blue skies. I'm half a mile from the racecourse. It hasn't rained here for 10 days. The temperature's...
You've got a bit of sunburn on that side of your face.
Absolutely, yeah, I know, absolutely. I'm in a world of trouble here. But the point being, this ground at the time of recording is officially good. There's going to be 2 more days of clear skies. Pied Piper, both his wins on the flat with the Gosford team came on absolutely bottomless ground. Both wins came on heavy, and then the ground was, according to all the jockeys, was riding extremely deep at Punchestown last time out when he won. Just makes me a little bit nervous. A horse with 3 career wins, all on bottomless ground. This is going to be a totally different ball game, and as Andy referenced to, they're not going to hang around here. There's a lot of pace on, and of course the horse does have he's used to it from the flat, but that would just be get me slightly nervous about him. This is probably going to be the quickest ground conditions he's encountered, and I do just wonder whether Intern de Civila's being slightly kind of snobbily overlooked here, given the fact perhaps this Nick Williams, Chester Williams kind of combination. I watched the race back again last night, and I think he's got a fair old engine, this horse. I thought he did it really good style. We got all the kind of, as I called it, the passive-aggressive comments come out after where he was given a good ride that day. He was given it all that kind of as in, yeah, well, that was his one-off occasion, and there'll be other days where he gets swamped. I'm not so sure. And when you look at the form of that win as well, it's actually got some substance to it. The horse he beat Gary Moore's Yorksea has since gone down to Fontwell and won 20 lengths hard held. And the horse back in third behind him, and Milton Harris's, went up to Doncaster and won. So there's a little bit of robustness to the form, if you see what I'm saying. And he did it in very good style. He really did. You'd see the comparisons with old Rev de Civila are coming back already. That lovable horse from the yard going back a decade or so ago. But I'm a bit of Intern de Civila at the prices here. I think I saw a bit of 5-1 flying around a couple of days ago. I think a Pied Piper I'm worried about on the ground. Isio, I totally take Andy's point, could be a class apart here. But this is, he doesn't have the Cheltenham form in the book. Intern de Civila has been there and done it. So Intern de Civila for me at the prices.
Intern de Civila 9-2 best price as it stands, but only a couple of firms out at the moment after Dex. So that could be a bit of 5s a bit later on there. The one for Ed. Ed, we'll stick with you now for the third race of the day, the 120, the Handicap Chase, where Solo is the 9-2 favourite ahead of Imperial Alcazar and Java Point, both 5-1. When you're ready, and go a Lil 11-2 each, Oscar Elite 6-1. Your Darling 6-1, Beatstown 13-2. It's probably one of the trappiest 8-runner races I think I've ever seen in terms of prices. How do you see it going?
Tricky one, isn't it? This is a bit of a who's who of my kind of cliff horses in here, it has to be said. One of them being Oscar Elite, who off 137. This has got to be a wild handicapped horse over fences. I mean, he chased O'Mahoy Senior and Brave Man's Game, didn't he, at Aintree? He was played runner-up in the Albert Bartlett. I mean, all his novice hurdle form was top class. Things haven't quite clicked, and what was worrying last time at Cheltenham, I believe the vets report he burst blood vessels afterwards. So always just gets me a bit nervous, some of those horses that, they start to show those signs of wear and tear. And yeah, again, this is the Ben Pauling show we're coming back to. But of those of you with grey hairs will remind yourself to my our Horses to Follow show we did back in October or thereabouts. So Your Darling was put up in those 5, and he subsequently actually bolted up at Huntingdon on his Chase debut. Hasn't quite hit those heights since, it has to be said, on softer ground, up in class and up in the weights. However, it was a pretty hot race he ran in at Kempton over Christmas when finishing third. Danny Kerwin was behind him that day. That horse has since come out and absolutely bolted up by half the track at Wincanton. I just love the way Your Darling, or good groundman Huntingdon, really seemed to ping his obstacles. He seemed to be loving that better surface. We touched upon it. This is going to be pretty lively ground at Cheltenham at the weekend. Absolute world away from that the amount of rains we had at Kempton over the King George meeting. So I just think off 126, he's still open to improvement. I think he's still unexposed. I actually think 3 miles sooner rather than later will be his trip, but I think a stiff 2.5 would be fine for him. And again, I think on paper, this is a tad easier than the race he took part in over Christmas period. So I think ground could be key to him. Touch upon the Ben Pauling team coming back into better form. And he's another one from that yard. I think could be on a good mark off 126.
Sticking with the Ben Pauling theme, absolutely love it there for Ed. Andy?
I think I would have probably had my nap of the weekend, Ed, tipping Your Darling in that one, Svenny. So I got my first bet up anyway. I'm also going to follow the great man in here with Your Darling. Not because I'm of a Ben Pauling fan club persuasion, but genuinely because he's got some seriously good figures next to his name. Courtesy of that run at Kempton, which Ed's already alluded to. I did make a special note of Danny Kerwin running the other day because he was the first horse to come out of that Kempton race on Boxing Day. Now that race, I've done quite a bit of work on those 3 chase races over the Christmas period. I think it was Boxing Day, wasn't it? And the comparisons are quite startling. If you put the 3 races up together, the Novice Chase won by Braveman's Game, the King George Tornado Fly, and then you put the Novice Chase up, horses rated in the 130s, and that race there was by far and away the best on the final circuit by around about 20-25 lengths, which is quite incredible, really, when you think about it. So they were finishing very strongly in the back end of the race. They went a right proper gallop, and it was no great surprise that I think Your Darling faded after chasing the pace over the last. He was the one that went with the speed. The other 2 came through off the pace, Jackamar and I forget the horse what finished second. Was it Mr. Coffee, Master Coffee?
Yeah,
Also,
yeah.
He hasn't run since. We'll get on to Jackamar sooner or later because I think he runs in the next race with a chance. But Ed reckons that Ben's horse would probably want a little bit further in time. I actually think he's probably got a little bit more too much speed to be a 3 mile. I actually think he's probably better almost dropping down rather than going up. But 2.5 miles is fine. But the key to him is good ground. I mean, Ed's already pointed out he has to have good ground. If he gets winter ground, sloppy ground, hot ground that is made to make him work harder than he wants to, I think that's the key to him not running well, as we proved at Aintree the time before. But on genuine good ground, as you put it at Huntingdon, to a degree at Kempton, he's a pretty good horse, and the time figures very much point in his direction. So, yep, I'm all over him as well, particularly at the prices with the dead 8 runner race. Let's just hope all 8 runners go to post.
Yeah, exactly. Your Darling is 6-1 best price as it stands. One there for both Andy and for Ed and for the Ben Pauling fan club. Ed, we're not going to do the 245 at Donny, which is Ben's only other one on the day. But I think we'll just glide past that one rather than trying to do a preview. But yeah, not at present the one for the Ben Pauling Saturday Trixie. Although I think he does have an entry in the 340, so we might have another Ben option. On then to the 155, where we've got the handicap chase with Magic Saint at 7-2, Fairnet 9-2, Galahad Quest 5-1, Watmore 7-1, Cool Cody 15-2, Eden DeHoo 10-1, Jackamar as mentioned there by Andy 12-1, Torn and Frey 12-1, 14-1 Spirit of the Games, 16-1 Bar. And Andy, as you mentioned Jackamar there, and you seem to suggest he might be the way you're looking to play this one. We'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, it's very rare that you get ricks, but then you get glaring ricks, seismic ricks, and this one is definitely falls into that category. I literally just spat my drink out when I saw the price on Jackamar. I mean, he's 12-1. Goodness me! I mean, bookmakers need to check it from the neck up there with that. I just cannot get my head around how that horse is that price. Based on the numbers that we got this horse doing last time at Kempton, he should be nearly favourite here. Milton's always held this horse in very high regard, and I think it's only now that sort of belief is coming to fruition. The faster they go, the better. I mean, I can't imagine that there'd be anything other than a strong pace. There always is in these races, but because you've got Cool Cody in there, as he often does, goes off in front, forcing it long. You've got plenty of others there that like to be up with the speed that the Venetia Williams horse and Galahad Quest as well. So it'll really suit Jackamar. It's the perfect setup for him, really. I don't really normally like backing horses that are held up on the nude course at Cheltenham. I always think that you want to be up with the speed and on the front runners, but they do come from the bit back, as the mare of Nigel Twiston Davies did to win that big handicap chase at the previous meeting. Vienna Court. Yeah. It can collapse if they get the pace wrong up front. So yeah, either way you strip it down. I mean, Jackamar he can't be a 12-1 shot. Well, he isn't a 12-1 shot. I think it'd be about I think it'd be more 5-6-1 on Saturday.
12 to 1 at the moment, pretty much across the board as well. So shouldn't need to shop around too much to get it. Jackamar, the one to follow up that Boxing Day success at Kempton with a win here at Cheltenham. Ed?
I mean, I'm taking a strong view of that Kempton race. Obviously, your darling Danny Kerwin in it. The only thing I would say about Jackamar, which is a lot of his form is on flat tracks. You know, the Kemptons, the Wincantons, Aintree, I think his last 3 wins have come at. When he ran at Chepstow, he ran deplorably. That's the only question mark I got about him. Other than that, totally agree with Andy. Yeah, gobsmacked his double figures, to be honest with you. I think he's going to go at £3 for that win last time out. I think that was a hot race. He's definitely overpriced. So yeah, we're singing for the same hymn sheet here.
How can he be 3 times the price as Magic Saint?
I know. Yeah,
I just don't get that.
I just think
bookmakers telling us that he's because Magic Saint's improving all that well handicapped. So I don't see it myself.
Yeah, I'm with you. Just again at the prices. When I looked at this one, I had Jackamar at half the price of what he is. 12 to 1. Win, lose or draw just looks the wrong price in my opinion.
Looks the wrong price again. Hard to disagree really with the guys agreeing with each other. 12 to 1, as I say, Jackamar, but it sounds like that double figure price could be a thing of the past fairly swiftly. So get on it as soon as you can. Before we get into the Cotswold Chase, now is the time where we are going to go back and have a listen to my chat with Barry Geraghty yesterday. Worth remembering this was recorded on Wednesday, so before Final Deck. So apologies if any of it is a little bit dated. But great to speak to 888 Sport Ambassador Barry Geraghty about last weekend's racing and his fancies at Cheltenham on Saturday. Yeah, Barry, it's been a while since we last got to speak. So before we get into the racing that's been and the racing that's coming up this weekend, most importantly, how have you been? How's your 2022 started?
Good, yeah, no, it's been good. Quiet. We're just getting out of lockdown over here, so restrictions have been lifted. So I haven't availed of that massively yet, but I will shortly, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sure. And so long as you can get over here, what is it, 6 weeks, I think, and 5 days pretty much until the festival starts. The countdown can begin. And I'm pretty exciting. And the horses we're going to talk about in the main are some of the protagonists for the Cheltenham Festival coming up in March. And we have to start with, I think, one of the best races I've ever seen, if I'm honest. The Clarence House last weekend saw Shishkin take on Energumene, the titanic tussle between the two favourites for the Champion Chase, and it didn't disappoint, did it? I mean, what did you make of the way that Shishkin won, the manner of the race? What did you take out of it?
Well, it was a brilliant race, and it's rare that these matchups, work out to the billing. And this one really did. It was a brilliant race. Really strong gallop, even pace all the way. Shishkin made that nod at the 6th fence, but I wouldn't look into that. It wasn't a mistake. He didn't hit the fence. He just nodded on land and probably lost a little bit of momentum. Just one of those things, downhill fence. He was very good in the main. He did jump a little bit left. And Energumene was quicker at the last and just got away from Shishkin, but he finished really well. I thought Nico, by taking a wide course, I've come up there more times than not in Ascot. You've the same ground for every chase race ran in Ascot. You don't have fresh ground. So that was the 16th chase I think ran. Every race would have come up that inside track twice at least. So I thought that was definitely a help to Shishkin's finish. Where Energumene, you could say, was feeling the pinch probably halfway from the last of the line. So it was a brilliant run by Energumene, but Shishkin is the horse to take out of it, and he does jump better going left-handed. He shifts marginally left just to adjust his stride, and I think he's more comfortable doing it when he's going left-handed. Whereas in Ascot, as I say, at the last fence he wasn't as quick. Had he been going the other way, I think he'd been better at the last. So he is. It's hard to oppose him. But I think the prices for the Champion Chase, I think there's too big a difference between the two horses. There is only one good jump or one bad jump in it. I think both horses turned up in the Clarence House in tip-top shape. And if they line up in Cheltenham in the same shape, Shishkin is the better horse, but the margins are small. So I don't think the price is reflective of their ability.
Yeah, it was interesting because the prices all the way up to the basically until they jumped, all the market support was for Energumene. Shishkin going off around about 4 to 5. Energumene just odds against, and the margin of victory is pretty small. If you're looking at the in-running prices, I think Energumene went about 7 on. Shishkin touched 8 to 1 when he first came off the bridle up at the top. But now 4 to 6, Shishkin is best price for the Champion Chase. Energumene 3 to 1. I mean, was there a moment? I've seen some Shishkin fans saying they were never worried at all as they watched. They always felt that Shishkin would find more and be able to go past. Did you echo that, or were there times during the race where you agreed that Energumene looked the likely winner?
Yeah, I thought maybe jumping 3 out, maybe or 4 out for a second when Shishkin hit his flat, but which he expected, and Energumene was travelling strongly. But I could tell from Paul Townend's body language as he straightened up facing 2 out, he didn't have a massive amount in hand. He was going to stay going, but he didn't have another kick. Shishkin had come through his flat spot, had come back on the bridle, albeit Nico was squeezing and turning in. He was only squeezing him. So it was very much, it was in the balance. It could go either way. It was down to the jumping, really. And when you're going as hard as they are going, that's when, jumping is really tested. And as I say, Shishkin was got in close to the last and just lost a little bit of momentum. So it was I think he did extra well to get back up, but the better ground out wide is definitely a big player there. But it's hard to oppose Shishkin on the performance, as I said, but the prices aren't reflective. There isn't that big of a difference between them, I don't think.
Is there anything about Cheltenham itself that could play into Energumene's hands, or as you mentioned, because do you think it'll be Shishkin, the proven champion chaser there, who'll probably step forward further come the festival?
Yeah, as I say, I think if both horses turn up in top form, which they need to do, I think Shishkin comes out on top, and it's more confirmed going left-handed for me. If by chance Cheltenham managed to get very, very soft, and Energumene has been impressive on heavy ground, those conditions might be the only thing for me on a level pitch where Energumene could get back on top.
Tony Bloom doing a rain dance as he listens to this, I'm sure. Let's talk, before we look at the weekend's racing ahead of us, let's also have a look at a race we've spoken about a lot on this show. Let's talk about the first race of the festival, the Supreme Novice Hurdle, because those who've been listening to this for a while may have a few quid on the now favourite Constitution Hill at 2 to 1, who a horse you know very well indeed, who you mentioned on this show before his first run was something a little bit special. Since then, though, we have seen a bit of a change in the market behind Constitution Hill. Dysart Dynamo now the 7 to 2 second favourite. John Bon, whose performance last weekend ahead of Mai Tai. In a normal year, we'd probably see you well clear at the top of the Supreme betting, but because of the impressive nature of Constitution Hill's couple of wins, because of what we saw Dysart Dynamo do back on the 16th of January at Punchestown, winning by 19 lengths, this feels like a stellar renewal. What did you make of John Bon's performance, and what did you make of Dysart Dynamo over at Punchestown?
Yeah, John Bon, he obviously got it done. The positives you could take out of it are that he did settle better. They didn't go very quick. He was a little bit in Aidan's hands, a small bit keen, but he didn't pull his way to the front. So that's a positive. So he doesn't have to make the running in the Supreme. And there'll be more pace on, so he should relax even better. He did keep going, and he did his best work from the last of the line. So it was workmanlike. You couldn't say it was impressive, but those are the two positives I would take out of it. He is a very good horse, and he's proven that he has some good form, but it just wouldn't excite you the same way as Dysart Dynamo, who was explosive in Punchestown. That was a massive performance, and he beat Gringo the Aubrey. He beat him 19 lengths. He was 10 lengths behind stage star, but Dysart Dynamo, he won pulling up. To me, that was a huge performance. And then you talk about the Mullins camp, and you have to bring in Sir Gerhard. Hasn't been ruled in or ruled out yet. He has the option. Well, they all have the option of the Ballymore, but he's the one that people think might go for the Ballymore. But he's a very good horse. He was impressive too at Christmas, and I'm sure we'll see him again before Cheltenham. But he has the course form, which is probably the most important thing.
Looking at that market, so putting John Bon to the side a little bit there, as you mentioned, not quite as impressive as we saw Constitution Hill in beating Mai Tai. Do you think there's less between the two, Constitution Hill and Dysart Dynamo, than the 2 to 1, 7 to 2 suggests?
It's very hard to say. Both horses have annihilated what they've come up against, so it is hard to say. But they've been equally impressive. So maybe there shouldn't be as big a gap between them in the market. but you're nowhere near having any idea where the ceiling is for these horses. So it's a little bit of a shot in the dark, but I definitely have a known Constitution Hill and know his capabilities at home. I wouldn't swap him, but I was very, very impressed by Dysart Dynamo.
Let's look ahead to this weekend's racing, and we'll start with the Cotswold Chase, where Chantry House is the even money favourite ahead of I Write at 7-2, or Hoist Senior 4-1. Simply the bets at 9-2. Chantry House looking to bounce back from a disappointing performance on Boxing Day. Well supported, of course, on Boxing Day, but what do we reckon went wrong? Do we think Chantry House can put that right? And what do we need to see here for his festival prospects?
Yeah, the interesting thing with Chantry House for me, and I rode the horse, and I do like him. He is 8 from 11, which is, it takes a good horse to run up a that kind of sequence. So 8 from 11, he's been beaten 3 times. He was third in the Supreme, so there was no disappointment there. He ran a cracker. He was disappointing behind Fusel Raffles as a novice, where he just didn't turn up. He laboured on the day, and he finished third. He's better than that, and obviously he ran a completely lackluster race to King George. So you have to draw a line to that. After his disappointing run last season behind Fusel Raffles, he won his next 3, and 2 of those were Grade 1s. He does need to bounce back, but he is by far the best horse in the race. A High Senior, I felt, ran below par at Kempton, and I hope that they don't take up this race, and I'll probably be proved wrong maybe, but I think it's maybe taken on a little bit too much. It's strong company. I'd rather go for the Novice Chase and Weatherby that was mentioned. So it'd be interesting to see how he fares out. I'd have my reservations about him. I surely who won the rehearsal chase, and he was impressive. Loves soft ground. This is going to be a bit better, and it's a step up in class. I thought simply the bets showed a big improvement in form from his 2 previous starts to being second in Cheltenham over 2-4. On ratings, he's getting a few pound, and on ratings he comes out well. So he's a horse who's possibly going forward, and could be a danger. But I'd like to think if Chantry House turns up anywhere near his best, he should be very hard to beat.
Look then at the Cleve Hurdle, which should give us a pretty good indicator as to the stayers in a couple of months. And you mentioned there that you've ridden Chantry House. Well, you've certainly ridden Champ a few times, and Champ is the 2-1 favourite to win this one, to back up his unbelievable performance a few weeks ago. Paisley Park is 3-1, McFabulous 5-1, Lisnagar Oscar 6-1 with Don Levant, and Cool Cody 33s with Dandy Mag. John Joe O'Neill Jr. retains the ride here after a couple of rides from Nico, where circumstances dictating maybe that Nico didn't quite get a tune out of Champ. But what do you think of Champ's opportunity here to really prove himself as the one to beat in the stayers?
Yeah, well, he should win this, but I don't think this is the biggest test he'll have. Paisley Park has been running well, but just lacks the bit of pace, and with age he's got slower, obviously not faster. So the drying ground, and there doesn't look to be a massive amount of pace in the race. So I think those things are going to work against Paisley Park, and are going to add to Champ's strengths, because he was impressive in Ascot off a slowish run race. So he will have improved from that run. He should be very hard to beat. Reports are good and everything on him, so he should be hard to beat, as I say. McFabulous is 4 from 10, I think it is. He's been second 3 times, but he has a tendency of struggling in top company. So I think McFabulous at this stage, even the handicapper dropping £2 on his last run behind Stormy Ireland. So I think McFabulous is a horse who probably just struggles at the top level. So no, it should be all for Champ, really. And
then finally, a quick look at one other race this weekend. You want to look at the Juvenile Hurdle?
Yeah, I think it's a very good race. I think the best of the English, and potentially a very good Irish juvenile. So ICO, who was impressive in Kempton, Paul Nicholls' runner, has to be respected, one with a big shout. Then we have Intense the Savola, Nick Williams, who was impressive in Cheltenham last time, having improved on its previous run. Gary Moore's runner, Moulin Clermont, really impressive in Sandown as well, on heavy ground. But Pied Piper beat a horse, Vaboom, I think it's called, of Winnie Mullins's, who was well backed in Punchestown. But Pied Piper cost 225,000 off the flat, rated 93. I thought he jumped reasonably well. He ran a little bit keen. I think he's going to be more settled with the run under his belt. I think his hurdling will be better. I think he could be a very smart horse. And I see Davy Russell is jocked up on him, so we're presuming he runs, it's possibly a way for the stable to split up Pied Piper and Fedor, who's owned by the same owner, and obviously trained by Gordon Elliott as well, who is the head of the market for the Triumph Hurdle. So I think this could be a very smart horse, and I think he's taking on the best of the English. So it's going to be informative, but I like Pied Piper.
Pied Piper leading a merry dance in the second race at Cheltenham, the Juvenile Hurdle on Saturday. Thank you very much to 888 Sport Ambassador Barry Geraghty for taking the time to talk to us today and sharing his thoughts on racing this weekend and what we've seen already this year. Look forward to speaking to you again next week.
Cheers, George. Thank you.
Yeah, great as ever to speak to the great man, Barry. Looking forward to catching up with him next week again. But let's get into the Cotswold Chase, the Grade 2. Just over 3 miles and a furlong, and we've got Chantry House is the 10 to 11 favourite ahead of Simply the Bets 7 to 2, I Write 4 to 1, Santini 10 to 1, and Corto Rico 66 to 1. Sadly, this race has cut up a fair bit since Barry's thoughts, but certainly what he said in terms of Chantry House's chances here is still prevalent, and Simply the Bets as well. Chantry House, Andy, with a fairly disappointing run on Boxing Day, but still odds on here. Do we expect him to be able to bounce back from that?
Yeah, it was such a lifeless display, wasn't it, for him? I mean, he was very well fancied. He actually won a favourite in the end, which was a little bit of a surprise. I thought he'd run really well. I thought he was a fair each way bet. I think I put him up when we did this around about 5-6 to 1 or something like that, thinking he's likely to run his race. Whether he's good enough, I don't know. But at no stage did Nico de Boinville ever look comfortable on him. I mean, he jumped the first 2 or 3, and he was just sort of showing signs that, the horse wasn't travelling, whether it was the ground, whether it was the strong pace. Obviously, they went off really quick in the King George early. He just completely got taken off his feet. I don't know, but he basically just sulked or spat the dummy out. But, I mean, this is more of his environment, a small field where horses are not quite his level at the moment anyway. At least certainly 3 of them aren't. They've proven that on genuine good ground. And we know he likes Cheltenham. Whether we think he's a genuine out-and-out stayer or not, I don't know. I think he's probably always likely to be at his best at 3 miles, or dead flat 3 miles, like a Weatherby, something like that. Maybe the Charlie Hall next year, or distances under. That seems to be his profile as far as I could see. The thing is about Chantry House is that I think he's almost certain to beat the likes of Corto Rico and Santini and Simply the Bets, because I don't think they're quite up to a race of this level. I think Simply the Bets is not necessarily a 3 miler either. So it just all depends what they do with I Write. Presumably I Write will go from the front and really test the mettle of Chantry House. If there is a frailty in his makeup, it might well be a stamina based. And we know that I Write stays incredibly well. I think he's going to be underestimated because he's trained up the north by a fairly low level trainer with a great respect to Harriet Graham. But I think she's got a very, very good horse here on her hands. A horse that really wants it. He pulled out all the stops in the rehearsal chase at Newcastle when he beat Good Boy Bobby. And I actually followed that form line with Good Boy Bobby in the Roland Merrick at Weatherby next time out. And he went on to win quite nicely. But the time figure was exceptionally good. The last circuit was really good as well. They went a real good gallop. It was much quicker than the 2 mile handicap chase on the same card. So, like I say, he's got a combination of speed and stamina, and the fact that he'll make the run in and really push this lot leads me to believe that he's overpriced at his current price at 7 to 2. So, yeah, he'd do it for me, the top one here.
I Write 4 to 1. You're getting, Andy. 4 to 1 best price as it is at the moment.
Yeah, even better, yeah.
For I Write, Ed.
Yeah, a bit of a boring mug punter angle for me, but I think Chantry House will get the job done. I know one strand I thought could be, horse pulled up last time out. Crikey's odds on here, but I just think, look, this is his backyard. Listening to Nicky Henderson, Nico's comments after Kempton, it was all just happening too quickly. Kempton, he just seemed totally startled by it all, to be honest with you. And obviously he'd had that kind of prep run in a 2-runner nothingness race, suddenly at Sandown going into the King George. I think it just caught him all on the back foot and it was all too much. Here, small field at Cheltenham. We know he loves Cheltenham. Of course, he won the Marsh last season. He was placed in a Supreme. He's won at Cheltenham on another occasion. This is much more his backyard, if you like. There is that question mark about stamina per se, but I actually think he's starting to look a bit slower, to be honest with you. All in all, I just think this would be right for him. The cheap piece is gone for the first time. Just sharpen up his jumping. The one I did think could be the fly in the ointment would be Simply the Bets, that on the figures is not far away at all from these. In fact, comes out favourably given the penalty structure in here. And I just wondered if the bit of drying ground shaped last time out as though this kind of trick would suit. If Harry Cobden can get the horse to settle in this small field, I think he's going to be a player. But all in all, expect Chantry House to win, and then he'll go on to the Gold Cup with an each way chance, I'd probably say, as things stand. But yeah, the not my usual modus operandi, but I'm with the odds on favourite.
With the odds on favourite here, Chantry House at 10 to 11. Simply the bet's the danger in your view. Andy thinking I Right is the one to be on at 4 to 1. On to the 305 now, the Cleve Hurdle, where Champ heads the market at 8 to 15. McFabulous 4 to 1. Paisley Park 9 to 2. Lisnagar Oscar 25 to 1. Dandy Mag 50 to 1. You've tipped up an odds on shot there. Ed, are you going to tell us that Champ's now favoured at 8 to 15?
I'm going to take him on here. I just haven't totally bought the Champ revival story yet. I mean, it was one run. Don't get me wrong. He did it very nicely at Ascot. It was a very good style. But I wonder whether the kind of race had a little part a bit for him. I mean, Time Hill, don't think he's looked himself this season. He ran deplorably in France. He was very keen in the early stages of this. You've then got Paisley Park, who, he's starting to look his 10 years of age in truth. And Champ himself is 10. I can't think he's getting any better. It's just a case of how long can he maintain his decent form. And obviously over hurdles, it's clearly putting less of a stress on his back, which was the issue of why, his jumping went to pieces in the Gold Cup and he went off to Martinstown. He had a full MOT and they've tried to sort his back out. Clearly, over hurdles, he's enjoying it more. I just think he's going to be incredibly short price here. And I just wonder, again, I'm just looking at the kind of younger, fresher legs here. McFabulous could be the value just to serve it up to them. I thought here, he's a half brother to Waiting Patiently. We now have that horse enjoy good ground. I just think he stayed on really strongly like a train over 2.5 last time out at Cheltenham, admittedly behind Stormy Island, and that form in itself is not good enough to see McFabulous win this. But I think he's shaping like he wants every yard of 3 miles now. I think the sun coming out, good ground, going to be two big ticks in the right boxes, shall we say. And Paul Nicholls, after quite a couple of weeks with the flu jabs amongst a lot of his horses, they all seem to be starting to kind of come to the fore again now. So, yeah, I haven't quite bought the revival yet, and he's going to be incredibly short price. Wouldn't shock me if he went off 2 to 5, something like that. And, McFabulous against 2 aging 10-year-olds, both with histories of injuries and little setbacks and niggles, as you would expect of horses getting towards the twilight of their careers. So I think McFabulous, just turned 8. Let's not forget he's had the wind operation recently as well, which Paul Nicholls thinks has helped that horse turn a corner. He had a little niggle at the start of the season, which is why they shelved the chasing campaign. And I still think there's mileage in him over hurdle. So but Fabulous for me, he's my selection at the prices.
Ed, is there an each way angle there, given 5 run? So you're getting 1/4 to 2. So basically, if McFabulous ends up chasing Champ home, then you're getting your money back. Yeah,
possibly. Not normally my kind of style. Like, I'd go in win only, but I could see that angle. I mean, Paisley Park, I cannot. Fair play. If he wins this, I'll take that out for connections. But he's looking slower and slower. It was pretty much good ground. I think Andy will probably back up on the clock at Newbury when Thomas Darby beat him. The poor boy was taken off his feet there. He didn't know what day it was. And last time out on a bit of soft ground, it rained a lot before Ascot. They kind of came back to him to some extent, didn't they? And his stamina kicked in. I'd be worried about him getting a long way behind here, to be honest with you. I think Lisnagar Oscar will do his usual, bowl along in front, set a good kind of gallop. I think Champ will probably go, keep him in his sights. And I just could see Paisley Park, bless him, coming under the pump 3 out and just be taken off his feet on what will be genuine good spring ground, if you like, in the last week of January, which it almost seems a bit bizarre.
So McFabulous there, the one for Ed at 4 to 1, taking on Champ and Paisley Park. Andy?
Yeah, I think this is fairly straightforward from the way I can see. I've tried to half make cases out for McFabulous and Paisley Park and to a smaller degree Lisnagar Oscar. Certainly pay respect to what Ed's saying, but Paisley Park has looked the shadow of a form himself for the last 18 months. I don't really like the way he's racing. He looks as like he's had enough, really, for me. Lisnagar Oscar again, the ground might be his only saving grace, because I think better ground will help him. I think it was similar ground that he's likely to encounter Saturday to the one when he won the Stayers Hurdle a couple of years ago. and I'm not absolutely totally convinced that Mac Fabulous will stay this trip. All the evidence that he's a genuine Chantry Hurdle horse. The 2.5 mile race there, when he probably take on the likes of Brewing Up a Storm, no doubt. At Chantry in April will probably suit him, but better. And the fact that it's hard to kind of like contain a horse like that who's got a lot of natural speed and exuberance over 3 mile one around this kind of track. So I think that's a problem that Harry Cobden's going to face, trying to hold on to him. So really, to all intents and purposes, I think Champ's got this in the bag, really. I mean, whether I take 8 to 15, it's probably a little bit shorter than I anticipated he might be, but he's winning the long walk was really impressive. I mean, he got there pulling a train, and then there was a point after he jumped the second last where you thought, Time Hill's bound to outrun him here. That lack of a run is likely to catch up with him, but God Almighty, didn't get his head down and battle, and he just did not want to get beat. So the fire is definitely still in his belly. We know he's always had the ability. I mean, his victory in the RSA a few years ago when he beat Alaho and Manila Indo was a sight to behold. He's proven that the class is still there as well. So it's a bit of a cop-out tip, really, tipping an 8 to 15 shot. But I genuinely don't think the other four can beat him. So it's no point me trying to, tip something else for the sake of it, just because it's a better price.
Yeah, sometimes the answer's right in front of you, Andy. 8 to 15 there for Champ to win the Cleve Hurdle. Penultimate race on the card, the 340, is the Ballymore Novice Hurdle. Andy, obviously our go-to man for all things Novice Hurdles. And we've got joint favourites at the top of the market, Balco Coastal and Hillcrest, both 7 to 4. North Lodge 6 to 1, a different kind 6 to 1. Picanha at 12 to 1, and Harper's Brook for Ben Pauling 25 to 1, heading up the market. 6 run here, Andy. Who do they can't split the top 2, but experience tells me that you probably can.
Well, we can't split the top 3 here on our time figures. We basically got Balco Coastal running to a 67, which is very good at Huntingdon last time out. We've got Hillcrest running to a 66 here last time out. Again, another strongly run true run race. And North Lodge is the fly in the ointment. That also ran to a 66 speed figure when he won on his debut, beating 2 very highly regarded horses, Bombs Away, who won since, and Richmond Lake, who won again next time out, and of course went on to run really well against John Bomb the other day. So I wouldn't underestimate North Lodge. The only problem with North Lodge is trained by Alan King, and Alan King's had 1 winner in his last 28 runners, and that was a 4 to 9 shot on the all-weather in the shape of Rainbow Dreamer. So his national hunt horses are struggling for form. That would be the only thing to put me off. So we're basically left with the front 2 in the market. It's which one you believe really has got the better form lines, because they've both done similar numbers. I happen to believe that Hillcrest is probably the one I'd go with here, based on what he's beaten and the manner in which he's beaten them. I think Iron Maximus was a seriously huge opponent for him here last time out. He was well backed. There was good money for Get a Tonic. I actually thought Dan Skelton's mare would cause 1 or 2 issues to the geldings that day, but she was readily put in a place. And I love the way that Hillcrest powered up the line. And to my eyes, he seemed to win with his ears pricked in the end. There seemed to be more left to come. The fact that he's also won over the course and distance as well, that has to count for plenty. The fact that he's already been around Cheltenham and Balco Coastal, it hasn't, is another factor. And I also think Balco Coastal as well, out of the 2, he's a bit more of a free-running type. I wouldn't say he's a tearaway, but if there is going to be any energy expended to anyone's detriment that'll take its toll in the latter stages, I think it might be Balco Coastal rather than Hillcrest. To my eyes, Hillcrest races very generously, but he races well within himself. He doesn't kind of like give himself a hard time. He does everything very easily. So you can ride him whichever way you want. They can make the run if nothing wants to go on, like he did last time out. He can still run fast. He can still track the pace if Balco Coastal wants to go on, if anything else wants to go on. So I think it'll give Richard Patrick and Connections plenty of options looking at this race, the way it's going to be run. So I think he's the one that I'll be with. The course and distant form, the numbers in the book, everything he just seems to take into his stride. So I'm a big fan of Hillcrest, and it'll be lovely to see him win for Henry Daly and for him to have a genuine contender again for one of the championship races at the festival.
Yeah, absolutely. Hillcrest 7 to 4, pretty much across the board there for this one. Ed?
Yeah, I'll take on board a lot what Andy says. I'm going to go against him, though, with Balco Coastal, purely because I just think this will come down to more of a test of speed compared to last time out. If you remember, the ground was really hard work when he saw if I'm Maximus. So I just look at that Hillcrest, and he looks like your traditional, Trevor Hemming, late Trevor Hemming's horse, doesn't he, really? He looks like he's going to get 9 miles stood on his head in time, an old-fashioned staying chaser. And I thought he just outstayed Iron Maximus just in very deep ground. This is going to be much more lively. Balco Coastal, obviously, totally different profile horse with 2 miles speed and on the sounder surface. I take Andy's point. Nico will have to try and keep the lid on him and conserve that burst of foot for the closing stages. But I just think we're going to see totally different kind of dynamics of races here at this meeting compared to what we've been used to. And I wouldn't be shocked if it was down to those two. But Balco Coastal just had a bit too much zip for him on this ground in the closing stages. That would be the only thing I'd think about. I mean, it was interesting listening to Henry Daly saying they were umming and ahhing about whether this might be too much of a test of speed. And they go for the 3 miler at the in the River Don up at Doncaster, and it was going to be a very late call. Well, they've gone this route, and that would be my only thing. I think it's between those two, but I would go with Balco Coastal just on the ground.
Do you think he'll stay the trip, Balco Coastal? That's the other thing
I don't know. It's a straightforward answer. I have no idea, but I get the feeling he will. But to what level, I don't know. But I just think if Nico could be there or thereabouts with him as they turn into home straight. As I said, I think this will be the horse that can quicken up more than rather outstay the opposition would be the one I want to go with. And I think you've always got a 2 to 2.5 miler of Balco Coastal. You're going to have a Kim Muir horse once upon a time in Hillcrest go further forward, for want of a better phrase. So I just think 2 totally different horses here. Tactics will be interesting in the dynamic of it, but not of any huge conviction. But at the prices, I would go with Balco Coastal just on the basis of the ground's going to be pretty lively, and I think that'll suit his more natural speed.
Pick your fighter. 7-4 for Eds with Balco Coastal. 7-4 Hillcrest with Andy. I'll leave it to the listeners and viewers to decide who's made the better case.
And I haven't tipped a Ben Pauling horse, George. That's probably the biggest headline from that race. So there we go.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll be tipping it in a couple of months in a handicap when it comes to that. Let's move on. I mean, the final race of the day is the Mayor's Bumper, and we don't have any prices. And Ed, you're shaking your head, so I'm guessing there's nothing from you there.
No, I'm sitting this one out. Yeah, absolutely.
Andy, anything from your speed figures to shed some light on this one?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple. I mean, the speed figures are just a sort of guide here, really. I mean, very rarely do you get massively strongly run bumpers, particularly mares races, but there is a couple that stand out here. The main one would be Hidden Beauty of Fergal O'Brien's.
Fergal's, yeah.
Ordinarily, you're drawn to a Fergal O'Brien horse, aren't you, in bumpers anyway? But particularly ones at Cheltenham. There's obviously a lot of thought gone into this. I would have thought they probably had this race on their radar for a little while now. They haven't run it since November, and he knows the time of day with these races. I had that phrase, but he does, because that was it Bontenay, the one at the other meeting, the Paddy Power meeting, and the season was a well hatched plan. And I can't believe this horse managed to win from where it did first time out of Foss. It was last turning in. Even you're sort of like your real Fergal O'Brien aficionados were thinking, God Almighty, what's Liam Harrison doing here? But he got it just right, because she came through very strongly at the end to win going away. I thought it was a tremendous effort. Time figure was very healthy, and she looks a really nice mare as well. I think the danger could well be Milton Harris's horse, Mullenberg, who won very, very easily at Ludlow. Not total surprise to connections, according to the post-race chat, but I think they see it as a horse that probably get further down the line, but come there as if it was just joined in. Over 2 out and wouldn't going away. So those would be the two that I'd be wanted to highlight, but the main one would be Fergal's horse, Hidden Beauty.
Hidden Beauty, the one to keep an eye on. Ed, before I let you guys go, anything else over Saturday's action you wanna just point to, or are we done at Cheltenham?
Yeah, done at Cheltenham, which is very quickly up at Doncaster in the big handicap there. The Skybet Chase. I thought Grand Sancy is one. Another Paul Nicholls horse has been on my radar. Horse has not been firing on all cylinders recently, but as a consequence, his handicap mark has plummeted. Was 152 at peak. Has dropped to 136. Has to go left-handed. Unknown in regards to the trip. but only has 10-7. Briar New Frost on board, and I thought if you ignore last time at Ascot, where the horse was jumping so left-handed, nearly ended up in the stands, back on a left-handed track. His penultimate run at Newbury, I think they ran over 2.6 that day. He kind of made some late gains. It offered encouragement that he would get this trip on a flat left-handed track, shall we say. And as I said, he's go back to his form of 18 months ago. He was competing in Grades 1s, Grade 2s, and he was carrying a stone more in theory, if you see what I'm saying. So yeah, he's 20-1. I wouldn't be shocked if he ran into a place at a big price with Briar Frost on board.
I'm afraid 14-1, Ed. Your millions have moved the market, but it stands anyway. That is in the 320 at Doncaster on Saturday. Thank you very much to both Ed and to Andy for joining us today and sharing their thoughts on a great day's racing at Cheltenham on Saturday. Please do download the oddschecker app for the very best prices, as we discussed today. Bookie offers free bets, best place terms as well, and Andy's tips straight to your app, amongst others, every morning of racing. Thank you very much to 888 Sport for sponsoring this podcast, and for their ambassador, Barry Geraghty, for sharing his thoughts. We'll be back next week to preview the weekend's racing. Fingers crossed for a cracker this weekend at Ed's local track. And please, as ever, ensure that you're gambling responsibly.